Our second game for episode 10 is Zookeeper, which was nominated by @TinPotGamer on Twitter, a very long-time fan of our show, a longtime friend of the show. And I'm very, very sad that it took me so long to get to one of the games he nominated. He or she is a man, right? Do you guys remember 10 Pot Gamer?
Yeah. What? Yeah. Sure. I think. I
mean,
gamer.
10 Pot Gamer's been following us on Twitter for a very long time and always has something funny to say. So I feel really bad because we should have done a game nominated by them much sooner. But anyway, Zookeeper, which was created by Taito of America in 1982 or 1983. I can't figure out which. It's interesting.
One of 3 games a Division made, I think. There was Zookeeper, there was
Kicks,
and Space Dungeon.
Yeah.
Twin-stick shooter game that came up before Robotron. That's interesting.
But they had an actual... I don't think Kicks counted. I think Kicks was made by a kind of... Not freelancers, but like people who pitched the... Or not pitched, but showed the game to Taito later. But I know that this one was actually made by Taito of America staff, and they actually had in Illinois, like in a small office that included developers. And this is worth mentioning because it's very forward thinking of Taito, who did not have to, I don't know what their rationale was, because they had this huge hit of Space Invaders under their belt, which in North America was a pretty big hit, but it wasn't the same kind of super mega hit that it was in Japan. But that doesn't matter because it was still made tons and tons of bank. But they had the foresight to say like, oh, actually, there are people here in North America who've been making games for like the Atari 2600 and other home computers and stuff that actually know how to make games. Like we could assemble a team of people and they could make games for us that we could use. And Zookeeper was one of those games.
Could that be considered like the first case of Japanese to Western outsourcing?
It might be. It really might be. Like it's not like something like Miss Pac-Man where it was kind of like a backdoor type of,
It was official, like
right. It was like
founding.
almost official ROM hack, basically. But it was more like they had this office of people, and like I said, I think it really was in Illinois, and this is what they did, and
they did a pretty good job.
They did a really good job. So Zookeeper is a fascinating game. I really wish I knew the exact time it came out because there's a interesting, very, very old web page out there that kind of recounts the history of it, and that says 1983, and that seems to be using some of the developers themselves as primary sources. But Wikipedia, which as we all know is the sole arbiter of truth in the 21st century, says it's 1982. So I don't know, but I guess it's kind of beside the point because the game it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a weird kind of reverse or inverse Dig Dug where you're a zookeeper who is also a bricklayer.
I'd say it's more like reverse Breakout.
I guess, but you're not really deflecting anything.
I'd be careful with the Breakout thing because if you look at the way the animals move, they don't obey Breakout rules at all.
No, you're not like bouncing. There's no physics involved in it. So I think that's...
I got a stupid question. Is this like the first game we've ever looked at that's from the golden age of video game arcades?
Nah, there's Galaga.
Oh,
Galaga.
Right.
This guy.
Yeah, my...
Like racist against old games, aren't you?
Well...
That's racist.
Wait, you mean me or Cal?
You're like, that's ageism against old games.
Oh, well...
They all look the same to you, don't they?
Just because...
I play plenty of old games. Me and Mappy, we go way back.
Just because a game is old certainly does not mean it is bad, and, the only problem is, I'm not sure...
Very clean-cut, upstanding, young, old game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an example to the other hoodlums out there.
I mean, I guess, the only...
I'm looking at you, major
I think Tango said
chaos.
I was just going to say that, like, it is a little difficult to discuss these older games because they're relatively blood simple, but this one has a bit more variance to it.
But also, they also had, because they were so early, they have the opportunity to invent a whole bunch of new crap. And so that gives them an edge in some ways because they are very, very inventive often because they have nothing else to draw from.
Yeah, true.
Unless you're a Space Invaders clone.
Which Fido also made.
Yeah, which we dealt with Galaga, and we talked about that. And that also was ranked very highly. And I think that was correctly dealt with. But, I mean, this game is, so basically it's like you are a zookeeper. You're running around an animal paddock in a zoo. The animals inside said paddock will erode the bricks on the exterior wall of said paddock. And you're trying to...
You mean interior?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
It's both.
I guess they're all exterior
They
walls,
eat their way through until they break
unless there's
through.
a divider within the paddock, which there never is. They're all exterior walls. So...
In any case, continue your description.
Yeah, anyway, so it's a as you cross over a section of that of the wall, you will always add additional bricks to it, no matter what state of repair or disrepair it's in. But the animals eat through the wall. I don't know what they're doing. They're eating through it. They're peeing on it. What are they doing? But they somehow they're eroding the wall, and they do it really fast. And there's always, I think, even on the very first screen, there's always one animal that's already escaped.
Well, by like the fourth or fifth screen, they just forget to put the wall in altogether.
It's interesting because it's very that's true. It starts out as just this pandemonium with animals everywhere. But so that's one major part of the game. That part is very similar. It's like a combination of, say, Donkey Kong and Tempest in the weirdest possible way. But
I've got to say, there must have been Donkey Kong influences in this game, which I'm sure
unquestionably. I think the developers are on the record as saying we had Donkey Kong in mind.
Matter of fact, after you complete enough stages of what could be called the main game, you eventually get to this other screen where a monkey is antagonizing you. So Donkey Kong parrots there.
You're oh, by the way, your zookeeper is named Zeke. And her paramour is named Zelda. Zelda in video game history, if I am not mistaken. So, of two. So,
until they make a biographical walking simulator about F. Scott Fitzgerald, I guess that's all we've got for now.
There's F. Scott Fitzgerald's Self-Loathamator.
I dislike his
virtual
work.
Reality. Yeah,
he's the most overrated author ever. But that's neither here nor there.
No.
Can we not?
Let's not go here. I'm just throwing off a hot take off the cuff here.
Because a hot take. What you're doing is scraping a unqualified opinion off the bottom of your shoe and dumping it directly into.
And that's all the time we have for Book Club 1990X.
So the next game we're going to rank is the F. Scott Fitzgerald's. No, there is.
Yeah, there's that Great Gatsby video game. That's actually pretty cool.
You fight one of the bosses are the eyes of Dr. J.T. Eckelberg. For all you Great Gatsby fans out there, but
of which I'm
anyway,
not.
Still better than the Frankenstein NES game. That's mine.
Can we talk about the Donkey Kong mini game?
Yeah, so there's these it's basically like Frogger meets Donkey Kong, right? It's conveyor belt platforms that you have to jump on to get to the top. There's a monkey dropping coconuts, and he's somehow bogarted your main squeeze, Zelda. And so if you get to the top of that, you win.
It's kind of a non sequitur too, because it doesn't really fit in any component of the game. It just shows up, and it's not a bonus stage. It's a mandatory stage.
I think
it's just like
I think it's like you're right. I thought it was a bonus stage the first time I played the game.
I want to.
And then I died. I'm like, oh wait, I started back over.
And then if you get far enough, you get another screen where you can possibly earn extra life, but it's like the hardest screen in the game.
Right, that's the escalator.
And the thing of it is, like that would normally in any other game be the one shot bonus level where if you lose, you just go on. But it's also apparently a mandatory level. Actually, a lot lost my last life to that screen last time I played this game.
That's
so
like
it's weird.
To the bonus stage or to the monkey stage?
Yeah, to the bonus stage, to the one with the escalators.
So you
it's
either
a real stage. Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah,
a
you're-
real stage. You can die.
Yeah, it's so funny. You either get an extra life or you can lose the game.
High stakes. Yeah, holy sh.
I
It's
think
like-
based on what I know about the game's development, there was some kind of issue about the people who made it not really knowing how hard it should be, and because they got really good at the game, I'm sure, and they were kind of like, I think the escalator stage was kind of like the final edition, and that
The
was
problem is, like, the cages you have to jump over that spawn the animals just, like, spawn them non-stop, and you're never sure when they're going to spawn or where your safe spots are going to be. And
I
you're just...
believe the whole game is like, because it's not like true random or anything. I believe you can predict it once you've watched the game because it tends to have the same pattern over and over. I think. Definitely the collectibles you can pick up always spawn in the same location. So
it's
if you
interesting
don't-
in that. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's interesting in that, like, the level, each stage, like the 3 different types of stages have not only different. The bricklaying stages are the Tempest-esque stages are actually like survival stages. They're not like, it's not like Pac-Man where you're covering territory, and it's not like
yeah, you don't even have
Donkey
to place
Kong
a
where you're
minimum
trying to
amount
reach a
of
goal.
bricks or anything. Yeah,
no,
it's like
you don't. You just have to
counts
survive.
down.
There's like a
Yeah.
little like a Mission Impossible-esque fuse at the top of the screen that burns through to the end, and once you get to the end, you're done. And you go to the next stage. And there are like little power-ups in there. There's a net power-up that you can use to catch animals that are on the exterior of the wall and put them back in the middle.
Yeah, every time a bonus item appears, it makes this really loud, weirdo sound. It's like, meow.
It does have a lot of weird Atari VCS kind of style elements to it. But the last cool thing I want to mention about the game is that it has this really trippy color effect on all the walls in the game. In that it's got this like rapid cycling rainbow effect, like descending rainbow kind of effect. And I haven't played the game in the wild, right, on an actual coin-op machine, but I've heard that effect looks really crazy on a proper screen. In that it kind of has this disorienting effect on the player in a way. It's kind of like
a little bit
the
like
1982 version of Rez in a way.
Yeah,
or Hotline Miami for that matter.
Closest thing I can think of at this time that was as colorful was a Robotron 2084.
It's weird because it has a Robotron-esque frantic vibe to it, but it is really nothing like Robotron. It is much more like I said, like it's a Tempest meets Donkey Kong kind of thing.
Yeah,
which is
definitely.
insane.
And also, the net is so far more infinitely useful than the hammer from Donkey Kong. That hammer really only just slows you down. It's only there for extra points, but this is practical.
Right.
Well, it kind of is used for the points because I believe your biggest points come from catching the animals if you're into points.
Yep.
Right,
Well,
like the best way to get points is wait for the end level and just like grab a whole bunch of animals and
Yeah.
roll them up.
And that's the thing about the types of games from these era is that the high score is what you're going for. There's not really any other major objective.
True. I mean, it's also one of those early has that characteristic of early coin-op games, and that it had a bug that was kind of left in the game on purpose, which is that if you get far enough in the game, when you get to the Donkey Kong Frogger like scrolling platform stage, the platforms become invisible, and that was apparently a bug, but they just left it in the game because it was a way of scooting the player off on their merry way and getting somebody else's quarter into the machine.
That's evil. I didn't get that far. I have no idea.
The interesting thing is that the only way you can tell where the platforms are is that the coconuts that the evil monkey on the top of the screen throws will land on them, and that's how you know, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that level will fill up with coconuts very fast. I would like to mention an element of the controls, which is, it really throws me off. Well, it's interesting. when you jump in this game, unlike, as far as I know, almost any platformer made at the time, you can change your direction in midair. You just
Oh yes, that's true.
Yeah, it's practically necessary as well.
Is it the first game where you can change your direction in midair?
I mean, like 82, 83 seems very close to the first. I'm not 100% sure, but
I don't know of a game of this vintage that does that, because even the original Mario Brothers arcade game does not let you do that. Joust lets you do that, but it's kind of because it's got this floaty kind of physics to it. It makes more sense in the context of the game because you're manning a giant kind of quasi flightless bird.
Yeah, every button presses a flap.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
It's a really interesting thing, and you can even, and this I think is why it's kind of like maybe bug, or they just like, this is cool, we'll leave it in, because you can jump stationary and then smash a direction and you'll move in that direction. It's really great.
I did not notice that. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that actually, in my mind, puts it really high up there. Because being able to change directions in mid-jump is something that seems obvious to us now in the post-Super Mario Brothers world that constitutes the majority of, of game history. But at the time, in 1982 or 83, especially if it was first released in 82, that's really insane, because that's not something that happens in reality. It's something that you have to play a lot of games. You're like, I wish I could change directions in mid-jump.
Yeah, no, it only fits the game, because so often you have to make these bizarrely precise jumps that you can't do in a single direction. You kind of have to.
Yeah, I wonder if it was just because you could not beat the Frogger-esque stages unless you could change directions.
It's actually really interesting, because those Frogger-esque stages are really like, they're really bland in terms of like what you get now, but the actual control of the character is really nice. Like, it feels really good for like 83, and you fall too far, you don't die, you just land.
Right. Yeah.
I think actually when he hits the ground, he bounces a little bit, which is kind of interesting.
That's another great detail. That's true. I'm glad. Thank God you're here. I did not appreciate this game for what it was, although I did think very highly of it.
I think it's. I was surprised. I'm glad Mr. Timpot recommended it, because it's suggested we look at it, because it is very.
You can find it, by the way.
My issue with this game is that it feels like the escalator stage is just like this giant brick wall where all progress stops and you can't get any further.
It's true. That is a down. It does not feel as well fleshed out as the other things. I think it was put in there to be.
I almost kind of wish that it was only like the bricklaying stage that was in the game. Those feel like the most fun.
True, although I think the platforming part of it is...
It's a nice break. You can't just have the, like, sort of the zookeeper bits, because that's a bit, too samey.
You could, but I think it would have to... The difficulty on that would have to escalate a lot more slowly. It's kind of like a way of saying, oh, yeah, you thought you were good at this? Well, try this. And it's very, very different. Whereas even with Donkey Kong, which predated it, that was like... The 4 different stages in Donkey Kong were required the same mechanics to finish. It wasn't like it was throwing you for a loop in a way that this game did, but it still makes sense within the context of the game, because even when you're running around the brick wall stages in the Tempest mode, your character can jump, and you have to be able to jump or else you won't be able to get very far in the game.
Yes.
And that may also be where the changing directions in mid-jump. So there's this kind of weird, like, it's also, I think it might be the first game where you can jump upside down, by the way.
Yeah, it's got the controls were a little bit difficult to wrap your head around. I felt that was probably the
Metal Storm-esque, like reverse or upside down jump.
Yeah, it got a little bit of a headache. I just wanted to mention, this probably won't affect many people, but if you use a joystick that has more than 4 directions, it's extremely hard, because that point between the cardinal directions, it can't figure that out, because it only accepts up, down, left, right positioning. Like,
well, I think the diagonal directions count as cardinal directions, but what you're saying is like the basically between up and right and up and left and down and right and down.
Yeah, if you're using a controller that registers those, then it will probably you won't move, because the emulator, I think, will get confused. So you'll have to do a whole like.
Right. I mean, that's just an issue with the.
It will be an issue with the emulation rather than an actual machine, which would have only let you put in the 4 directions.
You should probably be able. You should be able to like adjust or use some kind of USB like kind of override type plugin to fix that kind of thing though, which you have to do.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of classic arcade games.
I think it's just worth mentioning the controls can get a bit headachy.
So where do we put this? Like, I feel like I got to put it above Tapper, which I feel like is a very similar game. Not
Why do you
similar,
say
but
that?
similar
More
vintage.
variety, or
Way more variety, and it's better it's as well executed, but it has more stuff in it. I really got to put it actually pretty high up there just because of the changing direction thing. But I feel like if I do exclusively on that, I might be wrong because there might be a game that predates it that did it first.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. I don't know if I'd rank it above Tapper. Like, Tapper does one thing, but it's very good at it, and the Zookeeper does more things, but not all of it is quite as polished.
I can see that. I mean, it doesn't. The difficulty doesn't escalate as fluidly or intuitively as Tapper does, because Tapper only does one thing. So it's just like each stage is just a little bit harder than the one before it. Whereas with this one, it feels like there's kind of a difficulty spike every couple of stages because you're doing the Donkey Kong levels. And then the escalator levels, which are just like not very well thought out, not very well designed. But they have a big payoff, which is very interesting and kind of unique in this era of games where you get that extra life if you can finish it. It's guaranteed.
Yeah, it doesn't do point extra life, which is an interesting change from a lot of these games because usually.
Right.
But yeah, like I do see it around the Tapper era. I think that it doesn't transcend that sort of polish that would put a game of this period up really high, because it is kind of like there's some really great ideas and elements in here and things that would be really big later on, but they didn't quite get it all together. I think it's fair enough. Like.
See, I would actually put it. I would put it between Descent and Wonder Boy and Monsterland, but it's probably way higher than you guys would.
Yeah.
I got an idea on how to rank it, but I don't know if you're gonna like it. Between NFL Blitz and Clash of Demon Head.
That's a little low. But I think you might be a little close. I'm going to say between. Between Marvel Land and WWF No Mercy.
Okay, I can take that.
That is a couple clicks higher.
I'll put it below Tapper. Nowhere lower than below Tapper.
Really? Okay, so I'm saying above Tapper, and everybody else is saying below Tapper, but
I'm trying to meet him halfway. Because like I do think like you can make an argument either way between it and Tapper.
So okay, all right. So it's going right below Tapper, right above
Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong Country 3. I mean, who can say that this game is not way better than Donkey Kong Country 3? That is a real.
Poor DKC 3, it gets dumped on so much.